He's real talented. That's the first thing I seen from him. His arm talent is off the charts. He's gonna be real good. I want to see him in action, but from my first impression, he's gonna be a real good player.
I asked you guys in my previous video which quarterback competition you want us to cover next, and one of the top comments came to us from Roberto Rodriguez 6914 saying, "Bro, please do Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Haener, please." So before we get to the content, this is the last week we're running giveaways for College Football 25. All you have to do to enter is follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Links to that's in the description down below. Now that we get all that out of the way, break. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The New Orleans Saints haven't really been the most exciting team to talk about over the past year. As a matter of fact, I don't think I talked about them on the channel at all last year. The last video I made on the New Orleans Saints had to do with the fact that they officially signed Derek Carr. And to be honest, I think the signing of Derek Carr is a reason why I didn't really talk about them throughout the entire season, because their entire division was also pretty mid. And you don't necessarily have a Super Bowl on your mind whenever you're signing Derek Carr to a contract. And we know what the deal with Derek Carr is at this point. He has those years where he really makes you think that he is an elite QB, kind of like what he did in 2017 and of course what he did in 2021. I'll always give him tremendous amounts of credit for that incredible 2021 season he had, where he threw for over 4,800 passing yards, 23 touchdowns. Despite the Henry Ruggs tragedy, despite John Gruden resigning in the middle of the season, this man put the team on his back and embarrassed Brandon Staley and the LA Chargers as he was doing it. But we all know what would end up happening with Derek Carr. Josh McDaniels would come in, destroy the Las Vegas Raiders franchise. For some reason, Mark Davis sided with Josh McDaniels over Derek Carr, and very shortly after getting extended in the summer of 2022, Derek Carr's contract was bought out 1 year later. So he signed on with the New Orleans Saints, and the results were mixed, if I'm being honest. The Saints were 9-8 with Derek Carr under center. Derek Carr is in his age 33 season, and behind the scenes, things weren't necessarily going so well. He was booed in a game in December, but in typical Derek Carr fashion, he turned this into some motivational rhetoric.
And yeah, I talk to my kids. I like, guys, you know, at the end of the day, you still got to do your job. I remember the other day, my son was, true story, he's frustrated with his math homework. He's getting really upset at it. He won't even look at the page. I look, son, it's okay. I'm gonna start booing you right now too. You know, and he made him laugh. You know, I was like, it doesn't matter, buddy. Just focus and do your best, man. That's all you can do. Knocked his homework out, and it was just a great lesson for him. You know, it was a great lesson as a dad to be able to teach him. So, look, man, I love everybody, and I'm gonna do my best this week to get everyone excited, complete all the passes I can complete, score all the points that we can score, and I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm gonna keep giving everything that I physically can, everything mentally that I can. To do my best, and I know all of our team is doing that, but we got to give them some stuff to get excited about, and we have in certain halves, you know, but we got to do it as a whole, you know, so we can, you know, keep being positive and keep getting excited about all the fun stuff that we believe that we can do.
But that would just be the very tip of the iceberg. I mean, in the end of October, Derek Carr would miss Chris Olave on the sideline. And the funniest part of this is Trayvon Walker was mic'd up, and Derek Carr was mad at Chris Olave despite this ball being way out of Chris Olave's reach. What are you doing? That would just be one of his wide receivers. Michael Thomas would also throw shade at Derek Carr by posting this to his story at the end of November.
That's the job of the quarterback, right? Find an open guy to throw it to him. Give him a ball he can catch and do something with after the catch.
And the ironic part is Michael Thomas was roasting Drew Brees during the end of Drew Brees' career with the New Orleans Saints. But if anyone is saying that I'm reaching with this Michael Thomas video, he also liked this comment on Instagram that said, "At Can't Guard Mike, you solid, my guy. 100 salute. I will always be your biggest supporter. Hopefully you'll be back next year with the Saints with the new head coach and quarterback. Carr is killing the Saints." And then there's this one clip of Derek Carr arguing with his offensive line. And I don't know, you could make an argument that maybe this center is trying to pump up Derek Carr, but at the same time, it looks like that they needed to be separated here. So I don't really know if that's the case. Regardless, I didn't think this was grounds for a video last year, primarily because because the Saints were 9-8. Derek Carr had a respectable season. It's not like he was holding them back that badly. It's just Derek Carr isn't even a top 20 QB in the NFL. And I know that sounds crazy, but I have Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Geno Smith, Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, all over him, and not in that order, by the way. I'm just listing players that I know for a fact are better than Derek Carr. So with that being said, the New Orleans Saints took a developmental QB in this year's NFL draft. Typically, when you take a quarterback in the 5th round of an NFL draft, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a developmental QB. There have been over 130 QBs selected in the 5th round of the NFL draft or later since 2000, and only 3 of them have had a 300-yard game with a passer rating of 140 or more. Tom Brady, who did it 14 times, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who did it 4 times, and Mike White. So typically 5th round picks don't turn out to be much, but at the same time, you could make the argument that Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson, who were selected in the 4th round, weren't supposed to be as good as they were. Tom Brady certainly wasn't supposed to be as good as he was. And while with the training camp that Spencer Rattler is having, I felt like this was our opportunity to discuss him a little bit. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with Spencer Rattler's story, it is a captivating one. I mean, this man was one of the highest recruits in the 2019 recruiting class, depending on the recruiting class that you looked at. He was considered to be the consensus #1 quarterback and overall prospect from Arizona in the 2019 recruiting class. And he also resembled Patrick Mahomes. And you know, whenever someone wears that little headband, all of a sudden scouts start getting hard eyes. It's not Trey Lance, it's not Spencer Rattler, it's the next coming of Patrick Mahomes, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I swear, you don't even need to be good on the football field anymore. Just gotta wear that headband and grow out your hair, and then bam, you're Patrick Mahomes all of a sudden. But in Spencer Rattler's case, this guy was straight up a baller, and the fact that he was also featured on a Netflix series called QB1 Beyond the Lights in the very dawn of the NIL era really boosted his popularity. Now, Spencer Rattler enrolled at Oklahoma. This was seen as a brilliant move because at the time, Oklahoma was just pumping out Heisman winning QBs. I mean, not only Heisman winning QBs, but #1 overall picks, some of which that had no business being a #1 overall pick. Nothing against Baker Mayfield, but if you just take a look at Lincoln Riley's track record, it's truly impressive. You get Texas Tech transfer Baker Mayfield that comes on over. Next thing you know, he's getting selected #1 overall over the likes of Josh Allen. You get Kyler Murray to dedicate himself to football over baseball, and all of a sudden he wins the Heisman Trophy and becomes the #1 overall pick the very next draft. Then you get Jalen Hurts, who transfers over from Alabama because Tua was getting more shine than he was, and he goes from a player that would have been undrafted in the NFL draft or a 7th round pick to being selected in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. So at this point, Lincoln Riley was known as a magician whenever it came to quarterback talent. You just plug in the athletic QB or Baker Mayfield into your offense, have him run it to perfection, and next thing you know, you have an NFL prospect or a Heisman Trophy winner. And in the case of Jalen Hurts, he would have won the Heisman Trophy if it wasn't for Joe Burrow being on a team with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and completely obliterating the opposition, which was awesome in hindsight. Jalen Hurts actually finished runner-up in that year, so Spencer Rattler clearly knew what he was doing. It was a great situation for him, and he wouldn't play until 2020. In 2020, Spencer Rattler would win the starting job as a redshirt freshman. On September 26, Rattler would tie the Oklahoma record for the most touchdown passes through 2 weeks with 8. But in his 2nd start, Oklahoma would get upset by Kansas State. In his 3rd start, he would upset Iowa State, and then he would have probably his best game as an Oklahoma Sooner, a comeback victory in the Red River rivalry game versus the Texas Longhorns. This went to 4 overtimes, and then his season would end after he would injure his hip versus Kansas. But in 2021, Rattler was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. But this time, things wouldn't go as well. Spencer Rattler would perform terribly versus Texas in the Red River rivalry in 2021, and he would get benched in favor of Caleb Williams, who would take the job and run with it. Once he saw that he was never going to get his job back, he decided to transfer to South Carolina. And in South Carolina, it was more of the same. same. The national spotlight wasn't on him nearly as much in 2022 and 2023, but to give you an idea, he threw for 18 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in his first year with South Carolina and just over 3,000 passing yards, and in his next year, he would lead South Carolina to a 5-7 record, complete 69% of his passes, throw for 19 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, which was a far cry from his 28 touchdowns, 7 interception performance in 2020. So he flashed potential in 2020 and he trended down from that point on, which was crazy because the man that replaced him, Caleb Williams, was the #1 overall pick in this year's NFL draft, whereas Spencer Rattler would get selected all the way in the 5th round of the NFL draft, and he was selected based off of potential alone. When you take a look at Spencer Rattler's scouting profile, NFL.com ranked him at a 5.95, which means he was just gonna be a backup or maybe on special teams. He had a mid 40-yard dash, but that's not really what he was ever known for. And just listen to the overview on him. A 4-year starter who took more starting snaps at South Carolina than he did at Oklahoma. Rattler will still flash glimpses of what he showed in his 2020 season as a Sooner, but fails to consistently sustain the type of play that NFL teams look for. He lacks desired height for a pocket passer and doesn't have enough arm strength to beat greedy NFL covermen. He was better than some of his 2023 numbers might indicate, as poor pass blocking and drop-prone receivers often put him in bad spots. He can scramble and extend plays, but he's not a dynamic runner and needs optimal protection and separation in order to work in rhythm. He needs an offense that can shrink the field so he can operate quickly and find his rhythm. He has the know-how, but might not have the tape or traits to inspire confidence in projecting anything more than a QB number 2 or 3, which is kind of interesting because New Orleans wide receivers aren't necessarily known for short passes. As a matter of fact, you have Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. Both of these wide receivers are home run type of wide receivers. And here's where it gets really interesting. Spencer Rattler has been balling out in training camp. And this isn't just something I'm picking up from a Twitter account that's saying, oh my God, every rookie is good. Listen to what Chris Olave has been saying about him.
What are your early impressions?
He's real talented. That's the first thing I've seen from him. His arm talent is off the charts. He's a real natural feel out there. He's going to be real good. I want to see him in action, but from my first impression, he's going to be a real good player.
Now look, whether or not Chris Olave is hyping up Spencer Rattler because he is sick and tired of Derek Carr is a different story, and I'm not necessarily sure if that's his prerogative. But if you just take a look at the footage, he's been looking pretty solid in training camp, and this hasn't only been a training camp thing. Like, look at this throw. Does this look like a man that struggles throwing the deep ball? And this isn't a one-off instance, because here's another example. In a 7-on-7, he was able to connect with Dylan Hooker over the middle of the field. And I'll be honest, this has been going on in rookie minicamp, which I ignored. This has been going on in OTAs, which I ignored. And according to this report, Rattler went 7 of 9 on the day through the air in team periods, which included a 40-yard touchdown pass and a 25-yard completion. Now look, you guys know me. I'm not the type that typically overhypes players in training camp, and that's not my purpose here. I'm not here to say, oh my God, Spencer Rattler is gonna be Patrick Mahomes. That is not what I'm going for at all whatsoever. Rather, this is a story that we've been covering on the channel for quite some time because it's a very unique story following Spencer Rattler all the way through his college football days until now. And what I'm just trying to say is keep an eye on this guy, because if there's a quarterback that could have a 2016 Dak Prescott-like season, it could be Spencer Rattler, or he could just be this year's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You guys remember how everyone thought DTR was somebody because of his spectacular preseason play last year, and then he finally got the opportunity and he didn't do much with it? That could definitely be Spencer Rattler's destiny as well. But regardless, he's performed well enough for us to bring it to your attention. Do I think he's gonna get the starting job from Derek Carr? No, but if he is prepared and he studies the playbook and he continues to develop chemistry with his wide receivers and he's ready for his moment, because I'm sure eventually the moment will come, and when the opportunity presents itself, then maybe, just maybe, we could see Spencer Rattler start at QB at some point, or even finish the season starting at QB. Especially if the Saints underperform throughout the season, I wouldn't be shocked if they gave Spencer Rattler some run at the end of the season, and he could have like a Sam Howell circa 2022 like run with the New Orleans Saints. Whether that turns into something else, I'm not necessarily sure, but it's a storyline that we will be following on this channel. I wanted to give a shout out to Roberto Rodriguez 6914 because I had a lot of fun researching this topic. Let me know in the comment section down below if there are any other training camp battles you want us to cover. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but a QB battle that we've been covering is Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson might be in some trouble here, man. We have a whole video dedicated to that. I'll leave that in the end screen. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.